and really focused on just getting better. We've tried to work towards September 26th, getting in the best shape we possibly can. But it was productive. Spent a lot of time as a staff on recruiting and players-wise, a lot on just things we need to work on as the season goes. As the week went on, we got into some Oklahoma State. Open Big 12 play this week, as you know, versus Oklahoma State. Open by just saying this. I think what Coach Gundy has done with his alma mater is really remarkable. One of the best in the Big 12 over the last 10 to 12 years. And Stillwater's a very, very tough place to play. And so offensively, we'll get into kind of how I see them. Offensively, extremely explosive, very talented at the skill positions. I think it starts with Chuba Hubbard, Heisman candidate, and really, his ability to break touchdowns, explosive plays at any time is really something that his ability to break tackles and make explosive plays what sets him apart, in my opinion. He gets a lot of publicity for his rushing attack, which he should, but he beat us last year with his receiving skills, which says a lot about him. And then Tylan Wallace, he's special. I think he had a groin injury last week, still almost went for 100 yards, and is really a guy that I think is as good as any wideout in the country. Have a lot of respect for him. And then they play with a lot of tempo. And Spencer Sanders is a guy that can hurt you both ways. I know he's questionable in the game, but we're preparing as he will play, as if he will play. I think defensively, underrated really from the midpoint of the season last year up until now. They've created a lot of negative plays, tackles for losses, sacks, and they've turned the ball and they've created takeaways or turnovers. Played really well last week. Tulsa 0 for 11 on third down, and 10 of 11 starters back on a group that, like I said, played really well down the stretch. I think the strength of the defense is their ability to mix and match. Okay, they give you a bunch of different looks. Credit to their coordinator for that. I think both linebackers are very good players. Rodriguez makes them go, and he's around the ball all the time. Amon, very talented. He hurt us last year, was in on a bunch of tackles. And then secondary-wise, I think they've got at least 4 NFL players in the back end and played a lot more man coverage in the game on Saturday, and I think that's because they can. And so they've been very good against the run too. I think that if you look at their rushing statistics, really over the last 6-7 games, they've held all their opponents under their average, and then they've done the same with scoring as well. So a hot unit coming in to this game. Special teams, they've been solid. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about a whole lot with Oklahoma State, but they've always had talented specialists, and this year is no different. I think the kicker and the punter and the snapper are upper tier in the Big 12, and then Stoner is a quality punt returner, and he hurt us last year, and then he had 2 really good returns last year. So with that, great opportunity for our program, ABC game on Saturday afternoon. I also want to remind all the Mountaineers that are tuning in, September 26th is Mountaineer Nation Day, so encourage everybody to wear their gold and blue on that day and be proud West Virginia Mountaineers. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
So, Coach, how extensive do you go back in film study? I'm sort of thinking Ellingsworth. I mean, do you have to go back and watch high school film of a true freshman that hasn't played hardly any college football?
Well, he came in the game last week, and I thought he did a really nice job. Anytime you come in your first play from scrimmage, you throw a touch fade, which is as hard a throw there is in football, and he did it. And so I think that the moment won't, if he does play against us, I don't think the moment will be too big for him. They had success with their backup quarterback last year against us, so I think their team will have some confidence going into the game because of that. But yeah, you go back and watch his high school film just to get a good understanding of who he is.
Next question comes from Robert Allen. Go ahead, Robert.
There we go, Coach. I wanted to ask you about your defensive setup now. I'm really curious about Coach Leslie, Coach Adai. You had that opportunity to go in the Eastern Kentucky game and see how that worked with one calling the front, one calling the back end. How did it work?
Yeah, well, we played well in that game. I don't know if that's an indicator how we're going to play for the rest of the season. But that staff has a lot of experience on that side of the ball. We've got a lot of faith in all those guys over there. I think our players do as well. But that's how we've approached it really since making the change. Is Jordan's kind of been the guy that's kind of controlled the front end, and Jamal's been in charge of the back end, and they work together on the game plan, and then they feed off each other during the game. But that's how we're gonna continue to move forward. And like I said, I got a lot of confidence in them.
Coach, we got a question submitted to us from Bob Kurtzel. What does a healthy Vandarius do for your defense, and how does it change things for you with his skill set?
Well, I'm more happy for him that he's healthy. This is probably the most healthy he's ever been in his career that I've known him. So over the last 20 months or so, this is the healthiest I've seen him. So he can add a dimension to us. He's got to continue to get better. I thought his good were really good against Eastern Kentucky, but he still had too many negative plays. He was on the ground too much. I think he's got to stay up. But he does. He has plus pass rushing skills, and he has the ability to play standing up at the second level or play down on the line of scrimmage.
Next question will be from Ryan Pritt. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, Coach. Just take us a little bit into these last couple of weeks if you can. I know you said the goal was to get better. Were there specific areas you're really targeting there? Or are there areas you feel like you've kind of advanced in a lot? Or are there still areas that you're a little bit concerned about? And just how much better off do you think you are right now than the last time we saw you against Eastern Kentucky?
Well, the hope is we're better, and we kind of attacked that bye week with some goals in mind. Continue to work on our rushing offense. I think it's important that we stop the run, so we're working good on good. A lot of good on good work. Did a lot of work in the red zone because I think that's important. If you look at Big 12 games, a lot of those are decided in the red zone. That's where we lost a lot last year on both sides of the ball. And we put a lot of work into special teams. We underperformed week one special teams really in all the phases. And so we've put a lot of time into that, drill work and good versus good work in that area.
Next up will be from Cody Mesper.
Hey, Neal. I was just wondering, what do you think it's going to be like to play against Josh Sills on Saturday? And do you have experience playing against former players?
I'm sure I do. Nothing that sticks out. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we're going to line up, and he's going to play offense, and our defense guys are going to go out there and play. We wish him the best of luck. Obviously don't want a whole lot of success in this game, but after that, we wish him the best of luck. Hadn't really thought about it.
Next question will be from Sean Manning.
Hey Neil, with digital whistles, I didn't hear it or see it be an issue in the Eastern Kentucky game, but the game in Stillwater with fans there, it seemed like there were a lot of guys going full speed on dead plays. Is that a concern for you in general? And is there any way you could think to maybe improve that situation?
I did notice that. I noticed it watching it on TV, and then it's evident on the coach copy. And so I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if at practice I wear a whistle underneath a gaiter, so I think that's one answer. But I really haven't talked to Greg Burks about it, so I don't know what precautions or what changes they're planning on making as far as with the officials. But it was evident. It was evident that there were several plays that played through the whistle. They said it happened in the NFL Week 1. I didn't see it, but it was clear in that game.
Go ahead, Michael.
So kicking off conference play against Oklahoma State, a tough established team, how much of a measuring stick game do you think this is heading into year 2 of the climb?
Well, I think without a doubt it is. It's I think it's important to see if we're ready to play against the top teams in our conference, which I would argue that Oklahoma State is right up there with anybody. They probably have the most experience on both sides of the ball and on special teams returning. And so I think that's a fair assessment.
Next question comes from Barry Trammell.
Yeah, Neal, you are relatively new to West Virginia. I've been to Morgantown a bunch, and they've embraced the Big 12 and all those things, but it's still is a little bit strange, the separation between Morgantown and the rest of the conference. How do you view West Virginia and the Big 12's relationship? Is it just normal to you since you don't really know anything else, or is the geography still an issue?
No, I think it's pretty. And Barry, I'll say this is I hadn't really put a whole lot of time thinking about it, honestly. They came in the league when I was in the league at Texas Tech as a coordinator. And so, that was back in 2012. So in my mind, it's pretty, hey, we're a member of the Big 12 and a happy member, honestly. There's some difficult away trips for our fans. Outside of that, that's really the only time I really think about it is when our fans, talk about the difficulty to make a road trip. Other than that, I like the venues, some of the top venues in all of college football, great college towns across the board in the Big 12. So I'm a happy, proud member, and I think I'd speak for our athletic department as well.
Next up is Kevin Kinder.
It's usually after game one, you've got an idea of what you have, but both offensive lines coming into this game are probably going to be a little bit different than what they were in game one. I know that you said for your line, their suspensions were over the moment the whistle blew at the end of the first game. But are you comfortable with what you're going to see? Is there still some of that anticipation of, hey, let's see what we've really got with, the first five that we think are going to go out there on Saturday?
Kevin, that's fair. I think there's some anticipation because we haven't seen Junior hadn't played in a game. Chase hadn't played in a game. They practiced really well. I feel good about going 7, maybe 8 deep with the offense line. We'll definitely play 7, maybe get into 8. But yeah, there's some anticipation, going into it. But I'm confident. I'm really confident in how those guys are going to play and how they're going to rise to the occasion. But it's a little bit different going into game 2 where they didn't play.
Coach, so walk us through the testing protocol on Friday, then, leading into travel. And do you expect to have a lot of trepidation in your own mind, concern as you
Greg,
find
there's
out the
trepidation
results?
every time we test. All right, so we tested last Friday. We were all clear as far as all testing negative. We tested Sunday. We were all clear, all tested negative. The same trepidation I'll feel on Fridays, the same one I'm going to feel tomorrow over about the 24, 36 hours it takes us to get the test back. And so, here's my philosophy on it is we're going to try to do the very best we can from a football program to follow every procedure and protocol that we possibly can, understanding that there's going to be some unfortunate circumstances or some things that we couldn't plan for. And when that happens, we'll just roll with the punch and try to do the next right thing. And what I mean by that, if somebody all of a sudden tests positive on a Friday, then we've got to move on. We've got to go and make adjustments as a staff. And we've had to, we're probably more flexible as a program, as a coaching staff than we've ever been. Just because there's been so many changes in the last 6 months.
Next question from John Tunick.
Just curious if you could walk me through how you're going to prepare for 2 different styles of quarterback, and knowing that you only have so much time with your guys, and of course Sanders being so dynamic and athletic. How do you go about that? How do you plan for that? And actually maybe 3.
Yeah, well, I think what you do is you prepare for the start for the guy that started the year, which is Spencer Sanders. Which is if he's well, I don't want to speak for Oklahoma State, but if he's well, then my assumption is he'll play, and that's who you prepare for. Now, if another guy plays, they'll adjust, and we'll have to adjust. But I think you go in and you prepare and you plan for the strengths of what he does and his dual threat ability, and then if you need to adjust, you adjust.
Next question from Mike Piazza. Go ahead, Mike.
Neal, when you get the stat sheet in your hand after that game, and you see there's two numbers that kind of jump out. I'm curious what you do with it as far as trying to get a explanation, but giving up 6 sacks and then going 11 for 11 on third down. I don't know, for your offense and your defense, how do you get to the bottom of those things? Try to figure out how you can either avoid that fate or be better at that.
So the first one I'll talk about, I'll hit them. I kind of hit the 6 sacks. I think offensively, my opinion of that game, when I look at Oklahoma State offensively, is, and we were there a year ago. Okay, so when your starting quarterback gets hurt within the first series of the game, and you'll remember that happened to Austin last year against Iowa State. From a coaching and a play caller standpoint, that makes it really difficult. And you plan, but you only have a certain amount of time to practice. And so when your starter gets knocked out, and it's not just the coaching staff, it's the players around them too. I mean, it's a body blow, and it takes you a little bit to recover. And so I think that's part of it. And so my belief and my assumption is that we're going to see an entirely different unit, a unit that, that's probably, they were in the top 10 in the country in most phases last year. And Chuba Hubbard's a Heisman Trophy candidate, and Tylan Wallace, a guy that's capable of winning Biletnikoff. And both of those guys have more than 2,500 yards apiece in their career. And so offensively as a whole, they're going to play better. And then offensive line-wise, they had to shuffle. They had some injuries in the game too, and that makes it really difficult because your communication, people don't talk about that, but the O-line piece is so important from a communication to make sure you're all on the same page. And it's hard to work different groups, especially in these COVID times, especially if and I don't know, if they've had some guys miss because they were in quarantine or any of that type of stuff, it makes it even harder. But I think they'll be much more in sync this week, and then you'll make it a lot of improvement from week 1 to week 2. On the flip side, the 0-11 on third downs, that's outstanding. But I really felt like, and I think that we even talked about this leading into this game last year when we played Oklahoma State. I think it was the next to last game. Is that defense made a lot of improvement from about the midpoint on last year, and they've got a bunch of guys that can play man coverage, and when you can do that on third down and you can generate a pass rush sometimes with 4 guys, which they did, then you can be good on third down. So I was probably less surprised that they were really successful on third down. Anytime you pitch a shutout, that's pretty impressive. But I was not surprised that they were really good on defense in that game, and even more so on third downs.
We'll take these last 3 questions in the queue. Scott Wright, you are next.
Neal, what have you thought of your defensive line play to this point, and how important will that be this week?
Yeah, I thought our young guys played well against Eastern Kentucky. I think our veterans can play better. Darius and Dante and Jeff Pooler and those guys, I think they can play better. I think they will play better. But that's going to be as important a matchup as there is in the game, is our D-line versus their O-line.
Back to Cody, go ahead.
So going back to watching film, I know you mentioned you would even go back and watch these quarterbacks' high school tape. Is it more important to see tape of the specific players or of like the overall scheme that they run?
Yeah, when we watch their high school tape, we're just watching that kid particularly. Schematics, it's a little bit up in the air because they've got a new play caller this year. And so it's a little bit of a guessing game anyway, regardless of who plays quarterback.
Go ahead, Chris Anderson.
Coach, the last time the NCAA made a ruling on in-person recruiting, you said you were prepared for that and had already adjusted before they announced it. With the recent ruling going all the way through the end of the year, were you prepared for that? And if so, how does this change your recruiting more than it already has?
I assumed it would happen, Chris. I think it's unfortunate for the student athletes more than anything, just because, a lot of them are playing reduced senior seasons or not even getting to play their senior season at all. And so that's hardly one hit. And now they don't really get to go through a normal cycle where they're taking official visits and those type of things. So I feel for them. As far as we are concerned, we've kind of been planning for this, that, you know, without official visits, trying to do the best we can as far as can't get live evaluations, but we're trying to get as much video and whether it's practice, workouts, actual game tape, whatever it is, trying to do the best we can to kind of finish out our class. You know, I think the one side effect, I think you'll see less flips. You know, if guys aren't allowed to take official visits, I think you'll see fewer flips than maybe I thought earlier. You know, you and I had talked in some of these press conferences earlier when all these flurry of commitments started. I thought it would go, you know, looking back when we were doing that back in April and May or whatever, is I thought what would happen is, you know, not being able to see in the future as far as how this pandemic would go. But I thought all these commitments, there would be, you know, we had a record number of early commits. I thought we would have a record number of late flips, but without official visits, I'm not sure that'll happen.
We'll take one last question from Mike Kazaza. Go ahead, Mike.
Neal, you got them late last season and then early this season. I'm guessing ordinarily that'd be kind of a benefit teaching because they can absorb and recall things better. But is that skewed a little bit now because, you know, they have Wallace this game? The quarterback is who knows. They have a new offensive coordinator. I don't know. Does it help at all, or is it very different?
I think it's probably split in all ways. You know, I'll speak on each side of the ball, is defensively they were quite a bit different last week. Now you don't know why that was. Are they going to be different, or were they just a little bit different last week? So you really look at not necessarily the schematics of it, but the one-on-one matchups. You know, the O-line versus D-line, receivers versus DBs, kind of go back and look and see how individual players did. So that's kind of the way we've attacked that. More kind of looking to see how our guys did. And then as far as this is a difficult prep game for us defensively because they do have a new play caller. Unsure of who's going to be the quarterback, you know, and now in this game, they do have Tylan Wallace, which is a whole different piece than when we played them last year at the end of the year. So normally it'd be a good thing. I'm not sure that it's going to make a whole lot of difference this time.